to loud. Let me get this off so you can see me too. Hello. I'm so excited. This is the first night of, or morning, afternoon, depending on when you're watching this and where you're watching it from, of Snakes Are Everything, our new online series that is kind of filling a void for me personally and probably for some of you as well. I mean, I'm a big time introvert, and I never thought, a year ago that at this point I would be sad about not being able to go to meetings and conferences and being able to give talks to people, because I've always thought I sort of at my best when I'm by myself and behind a computer screen, but I actually really miss that stuff. And, so we were thinking about that. And so we decided to launch this series where we can bring to you, I don't want to say snake experts. A lot of the people that we're going to have on are certainly experts, and certainly that is true tonight, but just different snake stars, and to tell you a little bit about why they are inspired by snakes, inspired to work by snakes, and just why we all love snakes. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit too. And tonight's guest I'm super excited about. So this is Dr. Jesús Rivas. He just joined the ASP Board of Directors last fall. And I'm going to go ahead and turn your camera on to Jesús. And I'm excited to have him. As a kid growing up, I was into snakes, and anacondas are the biggest ones of all. I have always been on team anaconda for who's the biggest. Never mind that length business. So I was just fascinated by that, and it was a dream for a while of like, I'm going to go and live in the jungle and study anacondas, and that is not what I ended up doing. So I'm super excited to hear what that was like.
You can do it.
Yeah, I can still go. We'll have to go down there sometime. I would still love to see one in the wild. They're so cool. Jesús has been working with anacondas for 29 years. That's amazing. He knows so much about them. He just published this book, Anaconda, The Secret Life of the World's Biggest Snake. And I fully admit, haven't read the whole thing yet. We just got our copy yesterday, but I think I was about 3 pages in and had already laughed out loud and also burst into tears. So I think it's pretty good. And so much of how you approach, how you study snakes and how you feel snakes is so much in line with how Jeff and I at ASP talk about snakes, and how the organization talks about snakes with using names and being into them for who they are rather than just what we're learning about them. So yeah, I'm excited. I know some people submitted questions ahead of time, and we have those, and we'll get to those at the end. But Jesús has indicated as he's doing his presentation, he's happy to answer questions. So you can put those in the chat on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching, and we'll keep an eye on that and get to them. And I don't want to take up any more of your screen's time, Jesús. So I'm gonna close out and let you take it from here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and thank you for you guys to being present here. I want to share with you a little bit what I have learned of snakes over all these years. I would like to have a conversation. I give lectures for a living all day long. So if you guys want to stop and interrupt and ask questions, by all means, do so. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as I talk, and I would like some fluid communication and exchange as we are talking. Of course, preparing for a lecture like this is kind of challenging because who are you talking to, right? So it's kind of sometimes you can be talking to an audience that is very knowledgeable, or you might be talking to an audience that is not as knowledgeable. So in all cases, it's important to I'll try do a shotgun approach, tell you what I think. If you have you want me to go into more details about some things, I'm happy to. I just realized when I share the screen, I don't see the chat, so I will be counting on Melissa to tell me there is something. Let me see if there is something I can do about that. Um, I didn't think of that aspect of the. Mhm. During start Chrome tab. No. If I share my entire screen, will I be able to see it? If I then when I make this, I still lose the. I still lose the. Okay, I guess I will. Melissa will tell me what I need to. Melissa will tell me what I need to. When there are questions, okay. So this is basically what I have been doing for the last 29 years, my spare time, studying anacondas, in particular green anacondas, but I have doing most of my research. A lot of people, but that talks about anacondas, thinks on the jungles. In fact, Melissa just a minute ago said that she would go out in the jungle. And the jungle is a great place for anacondas. All this area in South America, this is distribution of anacondas, all this area. That's not what I studied them. So I studied them here in the Llanos. This green area right here, the Llanos of Venezuela, is not quite jungle. Jungle is everything to the south there. And they are great for anacondas, but they are not so good for people. A great advantage of the Llanos for studying the anacondas is that it's very rural, it's very pristine habitat, and it's a flat savanna. It's not jungle. The only trees that you have are gallery forests. It's not really a place of deep forest, and that's probably mainly the reason of my success studying them. Because along with this flatness is a very seasonal habitat. So this is the wet season, when the whole savanna floods, and that's the dry season, same place. So the reason that made a big difference for me being successful catching snakes is because all the snakes that grow and feed and all the huge extension area then had to be concentrated in the dry season in the few places that have water. Anacondas are strictly aquatic. So thanks to that strong dry season, I was able to have some success catching snakes, and that made all the difference. This is some of the players. All kind of dogs, scarlet ibises, wading birds. All those, of course, are relevant because they're pretty, and I want to show off all the pretty animals, but also because they are all part of the trophic change that anaconda depends on. Not this guy. But basically, there's a general players that live with the anacondas. There's a perfect smile there. Yeah. That is a capybara. It's the largest rodent in the world. It is it's a rat, but it's about the size of a Rottweiler. Uh, 80 pounds. It's not uncommon. 100 pounds even. They can get that big. And they live in groups, and they are very important players trophically with anaconda biology. That is the individual, and of course they are tiger, they are jaguars, they are pumas, they are all the whole biology. Spectacle caimans is an alligator-like cousin. It's a cousin of the alligator. Doesn't grow quite as big. Get to be 8 feet long, 9 sometimes, but not no more than that. Normal is more like 5 to 7 feet.
Hey,
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I guess I have to have my camera on in order for you to hear me. I'm sorry. So the slides aren't advancing on our end. I think maybe because it's in presentation mode.
Oh.
So yeah, we can still see just the title and that stuff over on the left.
Oh, come on! You should have told me that earlier.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Okay,
I
can you guys
now it's a capybara.
technical glitches? So you can see the capybara.
Yes.
Okay, and when I do that, you lose the capybara. Okay, let's go back up. Let's go back up. Can you see that? Can you see the map of Venezuela?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess I make it bigger and make it big here. Make it almost like it was presentation mode. But that's silly. Should not I be able to share my screen in presentation mode? Screen share. Huh. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you're still seeing my presentation?
It still just looks like that sort of editing mode and PowerPoint, but it looks
Okay.
fine. I mean, we can see it. Yeah, that looks really good. I'm not sure
Okay.
why it's doing that. I don't know if it's
Well,
like a monitor setup thing or not.
who knows? But the advantage of this is now I can see the chat.
Ah, cool.
Let's do this then. If you guys are happy with this, let's do this. So this is the area of the study, is the Llanos of Venezuela. I was saying earlier, so the anacondas occur, the jungle, the South American rainforest and what have you is back here. So basically ends right there where the Llanos begin. This area is a hyperseasonal savanna. That is where you see kind of a huge extension, natural savanna. That stays savanna because it's floatable. So it floods regularly in the wet season. The whole thing gets full of water, and trees cannot grow because they're flooded. And then in the dry season, it dries out very substantially. So everything that grows in the huge extension of land eventually gets concentrated, and that is why I was able to find and catch the snakes. So that is the scarlet ibises, different animals that live with the anaconda and the anaconda feed on. That is piranhas. That is the happy smile I was telling you, perfect smile. That is the capybara I was telling you about. It's adorable. It's kind of a guinea pig. You could have a hybrid for a guinea pig and a hippo. That is what a capybara is. It's a rodent that lives in water and wallows in water like hippos do. Need to click on the slideshow start presentation. Yeah, I did that, but then I lose the screen. You guys don't see what I'm doing. You just see that and then somehow it doesn't progress. So all the animals. This is a spectacular caiman. Is a relative of the alligator, but a little smaller. Orinoco crocodiles, and these are larger than alligators normally. They also occur in the area, and of course the other player that we find in the llanos frequently is the anaconda itself. And that is the interesting part, is because this is an anaconda. That's all that you ever see when you find an anaconda in the wild. And they, even though they are large, they are not conspicuous. Most animals that are large are conspicuous, but anacondas, because they live in the water and they live under vegetation, you can be right in front of 18-foot long animal and still not see anything. So the way we go about finding them, we wait until the dry season is strong, and then there is a we walk through areas that are flooded but have vegetation coverage. Early attempts in clean water with a vegetation coverage were frustrating. We found just how everything else, but not anacondas. So one thing we learned early on is anacondas always prefer aquatic vegetation. So we go places like this and we shuffle through it with poking with poles or with our feet. And then when we find something hard, it could be one of these guys. It could be a snapping cyneck turtle, in which case it's a smooth. So in the llanos, there's no rocks. You can't find a rock to save your life. Everything you find is mud. So when you find something hard, it's probably a turtle, in which case then you just move it away or continue walking. But sometimes you step on something that is harder, has scales, as one of these guys. Sometimes they just hide under the vegetation, and we have a step on them hundreds and hundreds of times. They are surprisingly kind when we step on them. Apparently, when they are under the vegetation, they are some sort of lethargic, in some sort of torpor, and we just step on them and we feel them. Oh, there's a caiman there, and walk around them, and it's all okay. Sometimes they wake up, they make this biggest fuss, and but no one so far, no one has been hurt or beaten during that. And sometimes we step on something that is soft and scaly, and then we know we have an anaconda. Then we're on business. We need to find the biting end first. And then normally we have a number of people who help subdue, and normally the first person who holds the head does that, and then the rest of the crew try to help control the animal. So this was there was a crew that we brought to Venezuela. So this is an example. Early on in our study, we found this one of the first things that we learned. So this is me, by the way, when I had all that black hair. This is a female anaconda. You can see, big anaconda, and you see that all of us have smaller anacondas in our arms. Those are males. And the one of the surprising things that we learned early on was that is this very different size males and females, sexual size dimorphism. That's the technical name. But basically means that females, that one sex is much larger than the other. In this case, females are. So that was interesting and surprising, because we didn't know that at the time, and it was interesting to discover not only that they are different in size, but the difference in size is very, very extreme, and that was very interesting, fascinating. So that's a girl, that's a big female that we found at the time. We measure it. So one of the things, one of the challenges in that there's someone mentioned the debate about the who is the longest snake. How you measure a snake is a real challenge. So the way I do this, I muzzle the snakes and put a string around them, and then measure the string, and that gives a good measurement. I do it 3 times for consistency, and most times the measure is not quite the same. If the snake is calm and I do it careful and manage to stay on the middle line of the snake, I tend to get a good measure. But just to give you an anecdote, a friend of mine once was there and caught this snake that he measured, and he said it was 5.5 meters long, and it's about the longest of the snake that I had caught in the area, and I was fascinated. So he caught it, and then he put it in a cage, and he left, and I went back the next week, and he knew I was going, so I got the same snake, and I measured it to be 4.2 meters. So this is the same snake that was measured by 2 people, and we have 4 feet difference, 20% difference. So and that was a sobering finding, because when you have an anaconda that was measured, someone measured with a tape, the snake is thrashing around, or a python, whatever it is. Well, this was 20 feet or 18 feet. I don't think a foot or 2 is a meaningful difference when you deal with with a snake that is thrashing, and you don't know how it was measured. So Len has that problem when it comes to determining this size. And the other aspect, since someone brought up the issue about the largest snake, the anacondas are definitely heaviest. And if you were to ask anybody that knows about animals, what is the largest terrestrial mammal, they will say without hesitation, and African elephants are the largest terrestrial mammals. No one will start belly aching on how much taller giraffes are. Oh, but giraffes are taller. Because when it comes to size, mass is really the leading thing. The only reason we pay attention to length when it comes to snakes is because we find them long. We're impressed how long they are. But if you use the same yardstick that you use for any other to to measure the size of any other animal, we always use mass, and so that's why I had no qualms saying yes, anacondas are the largest, even though giraffes are taller than elephants. So that was a girl. That was a girl, and this is a boy. So that is the a very substantial difference in size between males and females. So the one that really creates the fuss are actually the female. The females are the one of the movies, so to speak. It's definitely a female because the males are not nearly as big. This shows you briefly what I have caught in this site in the Llanos. This is number of animals. This is the length in centimeters. So about this is about 3 meters. This is about 10 feet. Is right about here, and this is about 15, 16 feet long. And this is doesn't count the tail. So this snake here is about 17, 18 feet long, and this snake here is about 10 feet long, and so on. So, but you can see here that the males are don't grow, but hardly ever past the 10 feet mark. Normally they are below, between 6 to 8 feet. As all the males fall in that range. And females, of course, these are young juvenile females, girls that not adults. And then the ones when you go past 10 feet, there's most almost uniquely females. All right. We have M. Taylor is here. How you doing, dear? Um, so a little bit about the history of anacondas. It's a hard life for the babies. Um, so anacondas are big and powerful, and no one messes with a big female anaconda. But baby have a different story because they are not venomous, of course. They are not fast. They are not strong yet. All that they have to do to go by to survive is not be seen. And they are like an Oreo cookie. Whoever finds it eats them, and there's nothing they can do about it. So caimans, otters, foxes, storks, all those are prey predators that we have seen. That was an ocelot that my friend was lucky enough to catch, taking a picture of the anaconda, the ocelot eating a baby anaconda. But if you are an adult, things are not nearly as easy. Certainly in the llanos, this might be different in the jungle where there is no droughts. But in the llanos, because sometimes you have a very prolonged dry season, all the water bodies dry out. If an anaconda is caught in the middle of the day trying to move from one pond that is dry to another, in the llanos at 7 a.m., you have 90, 95 degrees. As soon as the sun rises, you get into the 90s in no time. So if an anaconda cannot get to a shelter, to a shade, or to a pond, it was traveling through the night and the day, so prices surf away from a pond, that snake will have a very hard time and will likely die. This snake overheated in the pond in the area. So life of them is different, and of course we find this sexual size dimorphism that we found that this kind of the dominant theme of anaconda biology is all permeated by how different they are in sizes, the males from the females. So obviously, if they are so different in size, they cannot eat the same thing, right? Because they are different diets, and the diet is probably cause and consequence of that different size, as we will see. This is the one and only example of an anaconda constricting or trying to eat a fish that I have. I have several hundred data points of anaconda diet. And the only one that I know of was this one that actually two. This one that's a piraputanga, is a fish in Brazil. A friend of mine took this picture. But doesn't happen often. It's a rather unusual event. The other time where an anaconda ate some sort of catfish in my study site, this catfish has a lot of spines, and apparently when it's trying to swallow the spines and the spikes, cut a hole through the anaconda esophagus and came out through the hole. So the anaconda lost her taste seafood, I'm sure. But he didn't get to eat it. So basically, one other surprising thing that I found is anacondas, aquatic as they are, they do not eat fish. I knew that in the Llanos, and for what I learned in other places in South America, it's not a preferred diet. Even when this happened, the locals tell me that it is unusual. They had never seen it. They like birds, so the birds are a strong prey item for anacondas since they are babies. When they are born, they are all a whole variety of wading birds, and that's a jacana, water jacana. That is a perfect size for a baby, a neonate anaconda, and they continue eating it after for a while. With all the avifauna that I show you, storks and herons and jabiru's and what have you, all those are fair game. Those are anaconda food after the anaconda is no longer their prey. That is an anaconda constricting a capybara. As I already told you, they do have an appetite for capybaras. That's an anaconda eating a white-tailed deer. You cannot probably tell it apart from a capybara because you don't see hooves, but that was the case. Of course, it was a female without antlers. So, but they do eat white-tailed deers as well. And that's anaconda constricting on a spectacle caiman. This is a 6 foot long spectacle caiman. And I want to, let me see if it is show you here. I want to use the magic of PowerPoint. Maybe let me do a shape fill shapes lines. Look at the line of the back of the caiman and look at the line of the tail. Look at these angles. Caimans do not bend their back in that angle. That is too acute an angle, too sharp an angle for a caiman to bend their back. So that anaconda has broken the back of the caiman. And that is part of the constricting behavior. The anaconda constrict, but also twists and pull. And when doing that, incapacitates the prey. Of course, breaks the spine, breaks the nerve core, the central nervous system, and that animal now is a lot less likely to fight back. But you can imagine this is a 6 foot long anaconda, far strong, 6 foot long caiman, far stronger than any human being. So this anaconda was about 14 feet long. It's strong enough that I managed to break the back of a caiman. So that is something to reckon with. That is the same anaconda, and I want you to notice the lighting of the picture. This is the same caiman, and that picture was taken with a flash. And that is same caiman swallowing same caiman. So it shows they are really they did a sweet time because you have it's a big meal that took some effort to catch. It's dangerous for a snake to kill a prey this big because the caiman obviously fights back and tries to bite, and those jaws can do some serious damage. And so, but after the snake eats it, then it's a substantial payoff. And the probably snake eats maybe 1 or 2 of those a year. That is my calculation. This is a picture of a friend of mine, George. He was we're looking for snakes. He's a photographer, but he was helping me out at this time, and we walk shuffling through the mud, through the vegetation, and we overlooked the snake. We walked over the snake and we did not detect it, but she detected us. So she comes out and starts tongue flicking. See, look at the time here. Look at the time, 1 second, continuous tongue flicking, following it. Another picture, 8 seconds, 2 seconds later, continuous, he keeps walking. And in the video, you can see how when he picks up his feet, he kicks the snake on the chin. This thing follows a tongue flicking. If you ever seen a snake being fed in an aquarium, a boa constrictor eating a mouse in a pet, you see the behavior of the snake, tongue flicking, following. That's exactly what that snake was doing. 12 seconds or 6 seconds tracking, following up. And you can see that there's a photographer filming this, right? He chose not to tell the guy, his friend, that there's a snake stalking him and wants to eat him. Eventually he talked about it, and then we turn around, and then he's turning. Here you can see how Ed is turning around. The snake is kind of surprised. Here you can see the S shape on the neck, preparing to strike. That is me getting in the shot, and then we grab the snake, and the snake snapped in the air. I didn't catch him. Couldn't grab him because he jumped back, and I held the snake down. So that we caught the snake that was without a doubt trying to eat him. When we measure her, she was long. She was, I think, like 15, 16 feet long, and but was very skinny. It weighed like 80 pounds or something. It wasn't really as fat as it should be. So my guess is that she gave birth the year before, and had not gotten a good meal for probably a whole year, and was fixing to get out of the energy deficit by getting a big meal. So I weighed Ed, and I weighed the snake. Ed was like 140% of its weight, a little less than that. So Ed was bigger than her, basically, in mass. So that is that is I feel very strongly a predaceous attempt that didn't work. Another time I found a snake that I knew had a meal, and when they have a meal, I try to not make them regurgitate, because they don't eat that often. For them to eat takes a long time, and to catch a prey is a lot of effort. So when they have a meal, losing a meal is a big blow in the energy deficit. So I don't make them regurgitate. In fact, when I find a snake that has a meal, I try not to catch it. I normally sit around and wait until wait a few days. They don't move when they have a meal. They sit in the same place, and I keep an eye until the lump goes down. When the lump goes down, I catch it. I can always identify where the meal was in the feces. So I do not. But this one, it was I didn't realize that I had a meal. But by the time I had caught her already, she already had a meal, and I knew if I let her go, she was gonna puke anyway. So I brought her into the camp, and she regurgitated. And to my surprise, I saw that snake is coming out of her mouth, and you see that thing. Those are the hemipenis, because this is a female that had eaten a male. So they do practice sexual cannibalism. This is a female that was in reproductive condition, and apparently when they are about to breed, they mate with several males, and they might take one or two to go before they, because during pregnancy they fast for 7 months. They don't eat anything, and they have a baby in their tummy. So anyone who knows about how hungry a pregnant woman goes becomes, knows how, if a snake is having a bunch of babies in her tummy, she's going to be hungry, but they don't eat. So they just pack the energy before they accumulate a bunch of fat in their bodies, and they live out of that fat, and raise the babies out of that fat during pregnancy. So this tells you briefly the data of Anaconda's diet that I had gathered. This is the first 100 data. So, and they majority of them is birds. They eat about quarter of the diet is turtles, is reptiles, tortoise, caimans. This is a combination of anacondas and iguanas and tegus, other lizards and snakes. And they eat mammals too. About 25% is mammals. So that was I put that because I have another event of one of my field assistants who another snake tried to eat. So there's two events actually in which a snake tried to eat someone who was working with me. Are all your diet data based on field observations on feeding? Yes, they are either based on field observations or feces. Sometimes I find if I catch a snake and the snake defecates, and then I know that I had I can identify because it had hair. I can identify the hair. Scales, I can identify the scales. So this all come from the field. And this in question twice. Okay. So, like for a male anaconda, courting a female could be hazardous to your health. Absolutely, that's one of the fascinating things that I found. When anacondas mate, they do a mating aggregation. Several males get together, and the selection for the male to be really fine-tuned to figure out when the female is receptive. When the female stop being receptive, that's the time they have to really get the heck out of there, because they can end up being lost, and that is not a good way to. Um, this is the diet of all anacondas, male, females, big, small. But when I break down by sex, and remember sexual dimorphism, these male and females being substantially different animals, is important in anacondas. And here you have birds. The diet of males, when you look only males, most of what they eat are birds: herons, storks, wading birds, ducks, and a few reptiles. This is mostly iguanas and turtles. The side-neck turtles, they are all sizes. I haven't seen any male eating a baby caiman, but I figure that they would, because they're caimans of all sizes from here to there. So I'm sure if a male anaconda finds a caiman, they will eat them. And this is the diet of females. And when you look at females, and there's also a combo of adults, juveniles, and adults. About a third of that is birds, and a third of that is mammal, and a third of that is reptiles. And when I see the data in more detail, when they become adults, when they start reproduction, they pretty much switch to mammals and reptiles, and pretty much drop birds, except for one species of ducks that they really like. Um, we'll get in that in a minute. So this number of prey the animal have found, and this is the size. And again, this is about 10 feet. This is 16 plus. This is 6 feet. So birds, small animals tend to eat birds majoritarily. Large animals past 3, and 3 is the time where females become reproductive. So the when the females become reproductive, basically they switch to mammals and reptiles. Have you seen your females use their mouth to clean after birth of newborn babies in the wild? Not of the babies. The babies pretty much crawl out of things they find. I don't know if they're gonna get far enough in this presentation to do that. But they eat the leftovers. So if there is a stillborn, they eat it. If there is an egg that wasn't fertilized, they eat it. So they eat leftovers. But the babies, they pretty much crawl out of their umbilical sac or their vitelline sac, and that they're having a sorb and go on their own. So, and this is the price that a snake has to pay, because as I show you, so large anacondas eat mostly mammals and reptiles. Very few birds. And the reason I believe is because birds are good for you, right? They are lean. They don't have a lot of fat. And that's why they are very abundant. Smaller animals eat them all the time. But when the female goes into reproduction, that they need to pack up the energy, the calories, in order to sustain a whole 7 months of fasting, because she's raising the babies. They really need to move to something that is more substantious, and then they eat birds and mammals. The only bird that they also eat, and that's most of these birds here when they are in adult size, are Canadian blue teals. And I was mystified by that, because if you look at the frequency, you have a whole bunch of whistling ducks, a whole bunch of other Anatidae, and the family of ducks. But Canadian blue teals are like 1 to 10, of the 1 to 9, basically, of the ducks you see. But in the diet of anacondas, it's backwards. Most of them are blue teals, and very few are the other ducks. And at first I was mystified. Why is that? I said, well, the Canadian doesn't know much about it's not as experienced. The one who lives here is more able to has evolved with this predator. But of course, Canadian blue teals are Canadian only by name, because there's for tens of thousands of years that have been going from Canada to Venezuela, so that they are just as Canadian as they are Venezuelans. They have been under selection pressure for anacondas just as much as the other ones. And then talking with a friend of mine, Pat Weatherhead, he's a herpetologist nowadays, but he started as an ornithologist. And he commented, yes, off the cuff, oh yeah, that's so interesting, when because they hunt them, right? And those guys, when those guys are going to migrate, they gather a layer of blubber about one finger thick around them, and that was the answer. So this duck is the bacon wrap duck, basically. And anacondas, these anacondas, they're fixing to get a big meal, a meal that is very nutritious. Those little ducks are really good because they are packed full of energy with all the fat. They're about to migrate, so they are in really good. They're uh, calorically speaking, they're very good. The rest of and also they're good. They are safe because they just ducks. They don't can do much harm to a snake. This other guys is a different story. This is a capybara. This anaconda ate a capybara, and look at what the capybara did before the anaconda can actually put it away. So they are like rats, but they are the size of a Rottweiler. So if you know the teeth of a regular laboratory rat, they're really sharp. If you can scale that up to the size of a Rottweiler, the teeth are about the size of my fingers, and razor sharp. So it is really, even though it's cute and adorable, it can be very dangerous if you're trying to kill them. And so that was this anaconda paid the price, a big chunk of its flesh in order to eat the capybara. These are other kind of wounds that I have found that was suspected in caiman. This is an anaconda that tried to eat a turtle, a cynic turtle that was too big, so she was too greedy, and then when this edge of the shells ripped through the throat and the esophagus, that snake died after that meal. Um, Other kind of injuries that snakes receive when they're trying to take a meal. And that is kind of, when you look at the number of scale of scars, these are number of scars, and this is size of the female. And remember, less than 300, less than 10 feet, those are males. Larger than that, those are females. And the scars increase with size. Obviously, the longer they are, the older they are, the more time they have to get scars. But after breeding age in females, they shoot up, because that is when they really start taking the gamble of eating very large prey. Thank you. We saw that at the Bronx Zoo. This is Frank Individual, who used to be a keeper at the Bronx Zoo. So this is to remind you the sizes, right? Males go up to 3 meters, and after 3 meters only females. So all these are all female. All the biggest scars are the girls. And when you look at the mean number of scars, and these are small scars, medium scars, large scars, females always have a much rougher life. Okay. So you were thinking, well, females are good because they eat the males. Yeah, the males can be eaten, but the females have a hard time throughout their life. How long, Melissa? This is what I've been talking about for half an hour.
I think I mean, we're not like limited by the technology or anything, so you can cover as much as you're comfortable with. I mean, if people can't stay through to the whole thing, they can catch the replay later.
Okay. So I just don't want to. I can talk snake for the next 29 years. I've been studying there for 29
I know,
years.
me too.
I can talk snake for 29 years, and I don't necessarily want to. That is bad pedagogy, right? So
Yeah.
maybe this is a good place to wrap up, and maybe take some more questions.
Okay.
If people wanted to do that.
Let's do that. Yeah, this was I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's kind of too bad that we don't get to have like sound on and video for everyone. I know that's kind of one thing I miss about the online presentations too, because there was a lot of laughing by me and Jeff, not at you, but with some of your slides and stuff. Like it's just, it's really nice to see. I mean, I'm always interested in talks about snakes, but it's extra cool when they're you try to inject a little humor and keep it light and not be so dry and serious. So let's cover some of the questions that we got beforehand. So Chen, I'm sorry.
Okay. So Hugh McChrystal is saying that he saw a female cleaning the afterbirth of the babies in a facility in the Bronx.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I had never seen it, but again, so I to see the females giving birth in captivity in the wild is next to impossible. I had three females that had transmitters, and so I knew that they were going to give birth, and I knew the time, and I knew they were fat, and they so when one day I went to find them, and this big female was gone. It wasn't where she was, and then I found her eventually with transmitter. She was skinny. She had given birth and moved away, and I spent all the time looking in the vegetation, in the water, in the areas, and I missed that. I couldn't see any baby. The babies, yeah, I mean, they normally give birth at night. We know that from some captivity trails. Normally, from sunset to 12 p.m. is when the time when they give birth. These were cages outdoors because I caught the when I realized I couldn't get the babies from pregnant females. I got the female when she was pregnant, put her in a cage, and waited for her to give birth. So and they did. That's when they give birth, but it was very hard to actually get to see when they were doing it. So I guess I tell you word for it. If you see them cleaning, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can anaconda survive an internal punter to the outside coming from a prey? Yes, they are unbelievably resilient to that kind of things. I had actually from inside. I had this anaconda ate a heron and long chip bill, and apparently in the constrictions, the bill poked through the skin. So this anaconda has about 6 or 8 inches of heron bill sticking out of her side, and this heron is inside her. She eventually, continue pushing it, and they heal. I have found anacondas with wounds full of mud, leeches inside the wounds. You say, well, that this is a goner. Not even pus, not even an infection. And next year, I find the snake nice and healed. So if we could borrow the immune system, I'm sure we'll cure a lot of diseases. That's very interesting. And all those injuries that I show you, the snake with being cut and from caimans and capybaras, most of the time, you saw all those scars, females with more than 100 scars to the body. Those are all those wounds that the anaconda survived. So they do survive that kind of thing. How do you hold a snake correctly and doesn't bite? Okay. There has several part of this question, several answers. First one is, if you don't know the snake, if you're not a snake person, do not hold snakes. Do not catch snakes. If you are a biologist, you study snakes, or you are someone who has a snake, you like snakes, and you have learned snakes, and you devote yourself to a snake, and then you learn how to do it. There is no I saw that on a video in YouTube. That's how you catch a snake. No, don't catch a snake. So that is the first level of the answer. There is no catching snakes. You are not someone who work with snakes, not catching a snake whatsoever, of any kind. If you like snakes and you want to learn snakes, you want to become a herpetologist, whether aficionado or by a career, then by all means, come and study, and we'll teach you that stuff. That's good. I want people to learn about snakes, but I don't want to. I'm worried about giving a quick and dirty. Oh, this is how you do to catch a snake, because the best thing to do is not to catch a snake unless you know what you're doing. Another snake stalk your assistant, laughing out loud. Yeah, well, the guy who was watching, who was filming, is the one who did that. we'll have some conversation about that later. Um, in general, how do people in areas where anacondas are common feel about them? They don't like them. They don't like them. Period. They kill them. So and that is one of the problems of conservation, anaconda conservation. Even though the South America, the area distribution of anacondas is very large, and there are many anacondas. Uh, um, they have several problems. One, because they are top predators. When people move in there, people eat their game, and then anaconda have no food. That's one problem. But also because anacondas are feared, people kill them. And quite honestly, anacondas will approach people if there's no food, and people are intruding in their terrain, and people have pigs and dogs and chickens. Anaconda will eat those all the time. And anaconda as a generous predator is not a man eater. So because anacondas is not evolved did not evolve eating primates, even though they might eat some monkeys now and then. But this ain't any primate like us in South America, so we're not a natural prey of anacondas. They are a generalistic predator, and there is no reason why anaconda could not eat the scene of people, and the conditions are right, try to eat a person. And they are strong enough to kill and eat a person. So for all those reasons, when anaconda people and anacondas overlap, the anaconda ends up with a machete. So they kill them. And some people ask me, well, do they eat the meat? No, people don't like anacondas. Period. Don't like the meat. Don't like them alive. Don't like them around. So they kill them. And that is true throughout South America. I haven't done a good survey with a Native American population, but the ones that I have known about, they are afraid of it. They revere it. They want it there. They don't touch it. They don't eat it either. So, to my knowledge, the Native American communities that I have the opportunity to explore and ask about, they don't get anacondas either. Um, that's good to hear. As one of my rescue snakes in UK have biopsies in 3 sites today, I was worried about healing. Yeah, I mean, if it is yeah, no, if it was a biopsy, was doing sterile conditions, I wouldn't even use antibiotics because I'm sure the vet who did it gave antibiotic too, but they're really tough healers. Do you think this might have been a recent development as snake have used to be revered in those areas? Um, I don't know. So Native Americans, the ones that I have experience with, they fear them, and they respect them. So they don't necessarily kill them. So to that extent, it's probably the recent development with the Western culture. Because you bring within the Judeo-Christian tradition where snakes are evil, and the larger the snake, the more evil, the eviler it is. So that's probably not an Aboriginal, that's not a Native American custom killing snakes on sight, but more of a Westerner tradition, unfortunately. What was your biggest challenge getting into this field? Um, Gosh, that's a question. um, when I first started the project, I had I landed a very lucky grant from CITES, from the Convention for International Trade of Endangered Species, and and I had promised. It was a very responsible promise. I said I was gonna catch all these snakes and blah 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 when I requested the funding, and I had no reasons to believe that was going to be true. I mean, if they had looked a little bit in this, there's no way you're going to catch all those snakes and recapture them and mark and recapture. But so before the field, the week before, I didn't say, oh my God, what am I going to do catching them? I have been working in the area for years, and seen very few anacondas. And then I promised I'm going to be catching 12 to put transmitters in them and catch a few hundred for telemetry for mark and recapture. It turned out that I came through. The biggest challenge is that no one knew much about anacondas in scientific circles, and the way I overcame it is because in the Llanos, There are cowboys. I showed you a picture of this guy in the house horse, horseback riding. The Llanos still has the same mode of production that it had 200 years ago. There's huge extension of cattle grows, and people go around, round them up, and get the calf, and get the ones that are ready to be sent to the butcher, get sent to the butcher. The other ones go back. So it's kind of a ranching operation. It's not a it's not very. They don't feed the cattle. They don't do a lot of keeping. So the cowboys go into the savannah, that is pretty wild, and deal with animals all the time. So they have gathered a lot of knowledge, and I knew that. So when I started studying anacondas, I knew I didn't know anything. And Bill Holmstrom was helping me, the former curator of Bronx Zoo. Uh, um, and he was the person who knew more about snakes at the time. He had been taking care of anacondas in the zoo for decades, but of course he didn't know much about snakes in the wild, and no one had done any research with snakes. So my best shot was, ask the folks. I know that this guy had been around, old people, 60, 70-year old, horseback riding all their life, and they have a huge amount of knowledge about their nature, the animals, the wildlife. And I asked them, so hey, where can I find anacondas? And at first they couldn't imagine why on earth I wanted to find them, because they do all they could to avoid them. So wait, no, you go the other way. No, you want to find them, but why? But eventually, when I got to them, they'll tell me the places where they were. They knew that to avoid those places, and they thought I was crazy when they saw me going there and going and pulling snakes and grabbing them. So, but yeah, the big challenge is that there wasn't any background knowledge, and as a scientist, normally you go to the literature, you go look to the reference, find out what is not in the field, and that didn't give me any luck. But talking to the folks, taking a little of humility, right? I'm a scientist, but I don't know everything. And those guys, who many of them probably couldn't read or write, but they knew more about anacondas than anyone. And listen to your wisdom. I think that is 80% of the reason I could succeed in this project was thanks to that. How do you think there is a social structure within population? Family groups, mated pairs staying together? Huge, awesome questions. I don't know. I don't know. And I need another 29 years to answer those questions. Um, so, uh, so the honest question, straight one, I don't know. Now there comes the guesses. Um, I do find anacondas because I've been doing market recapture for a long time. I find anacondas, and then when I give the number, oh, this anaconda is 874. And 3 years later, I catch the animal again, 374. And in the same day, I catch 375. And that makes me wonder if I caught them 3 years before, and if they had common success in numbers, because I caught them together, and 3 years later I caught them also and they are together. That makes me suspicious that they might be friends. I had tried to look for male, female, and it doesn't work so well, because remember, the males is the male, the females is the males. But I am suspicious there might be family associations or females, fraternity, sorority, female sisterhoods, or cousinhoods. I'm very suspicious of that. I have some molecular data, blood samples of those animals, and the minute I get a chance, I would love to see if they are related, because having the behavior documented from the wild and the blood samples, I will be able to tell, hopefully, if there's a family group, or there's some associations, family association. I would love to to do that. He was skin biopsy. He has wart-like eruptions on part of his skin. The vet says to keep it clean. DAP diet, iodine twice a day. Captivity is obviously different than in the wild. Yeah, yeah, and of course, I'm sure those warts are probably papilloma virus, right? This is across all the. So there is I never seen them with warts, actually, but but who knows what that is. I see them. Maybe they were all cards or keloids that I mistook. Anacondas are also a snake. Yes, they are. One I think should not be kept in captivity as it is impossible to replicate the natural environment. There is a lot of people who think that way. A lot of people who think the other way. I don't have any myself, but there are people who really devote a lot of attention, and I don't know that they replicate the environment completely, but I cannot say that those anacondas are being mistreated. Um, that brings me to the issue of zoos that people ask me. Zoos are important. The reason I'm a biologist is because my grandpa took me to a zoo when I was a little. So even though the animals at zoos are not necessarily as happy as they could be if they were in the wild, I view them as ambassadors for their species to help us know them, and because it's important that we know who they are, and it's important that we develop feeling for them because people will not protect what people don't love, and having those exposure, those animals that you can say they are in jail, but being ambassador for the species, teaching humans who they are, I think that's important in the bigger picture. So that is we're not gonna settle that discussion obviously, but that is important one. I really enjoying your stream. Thank you. You are very welcome. Thank you for coming, TC. And you are right about keeping them or not. What's your strangest observation related to anaconda? Strangest observation. Well, a lot of things were surprising. The anaconda puking a male was quite surprising. Um, a friend of mine once told me the most surprising thing about anacondas is that they're fun to watch. Because most people have this idea that snakes, if snake watching is not really a thing, right? People, even herpers, you go for a snake, you grab the snake, you catch it. Anyone who does any herpetology, herpetocultural work, most of the time is hands on and not necessarily just watching, because a lot of times snakes don't move much. And this was a person, she was an ornithologist, and started working with me, and she was surprised how fun anacondas are to watch. So I guess that is that is a strange thing, considering that this is a snake, and a snake often are not necessarily that exciting to watch. Do you tell them apart by their marking? You can. You can tell them apart by their marking. Uh, uh, it's not easy visually, because they have in the tail, in the below the cloaca, they have a yellow background and black spots. Those spots are unique for individual. Um, so I take a drawing, I make a drawing of the snakes, and nowadays I take pictures. But when I started, digital photography wasn't that advanced, and I did had the means. So I would copy the drawing, and then when I catch a snake, and I have give them I mark them by scale clipping. I clip some scales and give them a number, but sometimes the scale have regrown. It was not 100% sure the name of this, the number of the snake was. Then I would look at the drawing, at the marking of the tail, and compare with the drawing I had done, so I could tell if it was the same or not. So they can be the individual markings are specific. If you had a computer in your brain, and you could tell them by the marking. Um, Indeed, love that you suggest. They are friends. Exactly. That's the only thing that keeps us together. Very interesting. The link to related snakes. How you work with no tails? Very little, very little. I had done my little work in Argentina, little work in Brazil, and Bolivia. I have collaborators, so basically I have helped people in those countries do research projects. So I'm kind of a collaborator in the work, but it's kind of more of their thing. So they are smaller than green anacondas. They have similar behavior, similar distribution, habitats, movement. They also eat their males. There are a number of things similar, and a few things are different, because in the areas where Noteus lives, it gets very cold. It's a Florida cold like. And of course, for American Florida, it's not cold, but for Venezuelan Florida, it's freaking cold at this one time of the year. For anacondas too. So I never found a green anaconda any colder than 22 degrees. So that is like 72 or 75. So anacondas below 70, they are in trouble. Green anacondas, but yellow anacondas, they get to the 40s and they get to freezing sometimes. So that's more like a Florida kind of thing. Yes, I agree. Zoos do a better job with the animals enclosures than a private keeper. I have seen them kept in very large rubs, which isn't right for any reptiles. Thought so. All snakes have markings unique to themselves. Wonderful, interesting creatures. My rescue fascinated me every day. Yeah, and I'm on the keeping snakes. Snake keepers, you find again a huge variety. You find some people. This person have a couple neglected snakes in a box and doesn't pay attention to them, or this biker who likes a well constrictor to show off. But then you have people who really have, particularly Barker, for instance, David Barker. He made a career, of course, on keeping snakes. There are a lot of people who take them very seriously and have their snakes no worse than they would be in a zoo. But yeah, there's a huge variability. A lot of people don't do that. Honestly, Venezuela is way nicer than Florida. Oh, hell yeah. What is the next project would you like to do with anacondas? Well, interesting question. So I have been studying them for all this time. Most of my research has been in Venezuela, in this place where there is very high concentration of anacondas, and because it's the dry season, concentrate them even more. I got bunch, I got thousands of anacondas there. Other places are less easy to work, but with what I know already, it is possible to start breaking ground in other places, and that has been my contribution with the colleagues in Brazil and Bolivia that I told you a minute ago. So I have my next thing will be to try to help, and again, I will not be able to study 29 years more of catching anacondas. I think I can still tangle with a big anaconda for another 10 years, but after that I need to pass the baton to the younger generations. So my idea would be to partner up with folks all over South America and get projects of the likes of this to see the variation, because Anaconda, South America is a big place, and look the same superficially. Oh yes, all rainforest, but there are a lot of variations in habitats, in vegetations, in diets and prey, and I would love to see how different how different the anacondas are from what I learned. So what is the range of variation of anacondas behavior and all that. So that is something that I would like to look at kind of in the longer term, and I'm kind of pursuing that. I strongly suspect that we have several species in what we call green anaconda. Um, some molecular data, some DNA analysis suggests that these snag anacondas in Venezuela, on the northern part, Guyana, what have you, are one thing, but the ones in the south, Peru, Bolivia, southern Brazil, maybe as much as a different species. It would be a cryptic species. Morphologically, they are indistinguishable. But when you look at the DNA, it seems that they haven't been exchanging genes for a few million years.
So
How
maybe
you
this last question from Hugh should be our last one, since it's after 6 and I don't want to keep you all night, Jesus.
how you work with other species of reptiles in the llano? Yes, I work with iguanas, I work with crocodiles, I work with caimans, I work with just about everything. In Venezuela, there are a lot of too many reptiles, too few people, and so yeah, I had the opportunity to work with a bunch of stuff there. So I'm very lucky. I would have to rescue them if people get them or weren't cruel to them all the rest of their life, to expose. Unfortunately, the way we trample the world, not just the snakes, is a problem. I see a lot of anacondas in the wild, need more people like yourself. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Melissa, for inviting me and giving me opportunity to talk to this very interesting and interested audience. Thank you for your questions, you folks, and keep the love for the snakes.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. This was I can't imagine a better way to kick this off than with the biggest and most awesomest of all. So thank you Thank you, everybody who came. And you know, if you're watching the replay of this and you have more questions, I will get those questions to Jesus and get answers to you. So feel free to put them in the chat and the comment forever. And thank you guys so much. And everybody have a
Feel
good
free to
night.
share my email with them so people can contact me. All right.
Okay. Yep.